Again, I like having visuals, so that's why the screen is up. But don't pay attention to those if you don't want to. There's a handout on your table. You can pretend to read that as well. We can all be friends together. So my name is Jake Sorenson. I'm a camp guy. I love going around to different camps around the country. I work with many different denominations in Christian camping. And that's been a ton of fun. But my heritage and my background is in Lutheran camping here in Wisconsin. I attended a camp in southwest Wisconsin as a kid called Sugar Creek Bible Camp. Fell in love with camping, had wonderful experiences there, worked there as a summer staff, and then went out to Colorado to Sky Ranch Lutheran Camp in the mountains. I met my wife out there. We've been married we're almost 15 years now. This year, that's great. We got 2 boys. Elijah's 13 and Nathaniel is 10, and they are now campers. And it's really fun to be a camper dad now. So I've kind of had all of the camp experiences. I've done some board stuff, and I worked as a director. I worked as a program director. And it was while I was working as a program director at Sugar Creek that I started asking these questions about camp and camping ministry. I had been in youth ministry for a while. And there's tons of books out and research about youth ministry, and I said, "Where's the stuff on camp?" Because a lot of times when you read these youth ministry books or these other ministry books, or those of us who have been to seminary, camp is sometimes looked at as the fun and games wing of youth ministry. It's not really anything deeply theological going on there, and so what we end up having is we have stories, which are incredibly powerful, and nothing is going to trump these stories of camp. So I had these personal stories at camp. Many of you in here are here because you had personal experiences, or your young people in your family had personal experiences at camp. But how about those people that haven't been to camp? How can we help them understand this amazing ministry and how it truly is a partnership ministry with the ministries of congregations and the ministries of homes? And so that led me back to Luther Seminary to seek the doctoral studies and looking at research. So that's what I've been doing for the past few years is traveling around to camps and doing some research and hearing from campers and staff members and all sorts of people about what is camp and what does it do in the lives of these young people. So I'm going to invite you on this journey with me as we look at some things. And part of our journey, we'll go to Imago Dei Village, which was one of the camps that was involved in the Effective Camp Research Project. And so, again, when we talk to pastors and people who haven't had those camp experiences, camp is sort of the fun and games wing. It's like sending kids to Great America or Six Flags. Like, they get back and the quintessential question is, did you have fun? And they say, yes. In fact, our research shows that 97, 98, 99% of the kids are going to say yes to that question. So if we can't be more creative than did you have fun, we're not going to find out about what happened in this deeply experiential time at camp. This idea that it's theologically shallow, there's nothing really significantly theological happening there. You often hear that in pastoral circles. And then, what does it have to do with church? I've even heard from some folks that camp ruins kids for church. You ever heard that before? I've heard that, and it was as far as I can understand it, the idea is the young people are going to go to camp and have a good time and be interacting in worship and being involved, and they're going to have these false expectations that worship is enjoyable and that it's interactive and that it's meaningful. And so that's going to somehow ruin them for church. And that seems to be a false reasoning to me. So we're very good at our camps in providing a wonderful experience, a wonderful, safe experience. As I've become a camper parent, a camper dad, I've come to respect a little more what happens afterwards. And so I want us to think about that today as well. As we think about this partnership ministry of the camp and congregation, I want us to think of this space and this time. What happens during that ride home? Who has had the privilege of picking up a child from camp and driving them home? right? Roll the windows down because it smells funny, right? And then there's one of two things that happen. Either they go, and they're totally zonked out, or they just go, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and they start to, it's almost this foreign language as they go on and on about these people that they met, these things that they did, and you're like, what the heck is a chicken race egg hunt? You know, and they have to explain that to you. And so I love picking up my kids from camp and hearing about their experiences and hearing the words that they use and what they talk about. So what I want you to think about as good camp people and camp supporters is on that ride home, what are you hoping that the young people are talking with their parents about? What are the words that you hope they'll use? Take 38 seconds and turn to the person next to you. What words do you hope they'll use on the car ride home? Ready to go. All right, everybody, come on back together. Come on back together. What kind of things did we come up with at our table? What are some of the words that you hope they'll use? How about from over here? Any words you came up with? Awesome. Awesome. Anything over here? New friends. New friends. How about over here? Encountering God. Faith. Anything from here? Songs. Yep. New stuff. New friends. New friends. Anybody else?
Fun and I found God.
Fun, found God. Beautiful. Yes, ma'am.
When can I go back?
When can I go back? Excellent. Anything else?
Sharing.
Sharing.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Get out of your comfort zone.
I got out of my comfort zone. I tried something new. Well, we asked the parents, not the kids. We asked the parents in the week following camp, on the ride home, or in the last few days, what are the words that your young people have used to describe the camp experience? This is what we heard. This is called a word cloud, and that means the bigger the word, the more frequently it was used. You'll notice something at the center here, loud and clear. That word is fun. So when I say that we want to get beyond this idea that camp is all fun and games, I mean that. However, that doesn't mean that camp's not fun, right? We see that at the center. But it's more than fun and games. Look at all these other things. What other words do you see? I know it's sort of hard to see in this light. What are some of the things that you see up there? Do you see experiences, activities, growth, songs, games, faith, God, Bible? What else? Worship, fellowship, counselor, church, inspiring. All of these things are part of the camp experience, right? It shouldn't be surprising that fun is the most common single word that was used. But remember, camp is much more than fun and games. Such a rich experience. So one of the things that I encourage camp staff members to do is to think about this car ride home. How are you, as a staff member, inspiring these young people to take new things home? How can you influence these conversations that happen in the home and in the congregation? And that's part of being partners in ministry. Now we asked directors. We did a nationwide survey of camp directors. Over 300 camps we heard from throughout the country. Not just Lutheran, other mainline denominations as well, 9 mainline denominations. You can see on your handout some of their responses to things that were most important about camp. What do you consider most important? On your sheet, I have all 300 camps represented. Up on the screen, I have just the Lutheran camps. Now you'll notice on both of them, safety's number one. We feel good about that, right? We feel good about that. 100% say it's very or extremely important, participant safety. We like that. That should be number one. But look where fun is. All the way down here. It's not that it's not fun. 95%, on your sheet it's 96 or 97% of directors say it's very or extremely important that these young people have fun. But look at all the things that are rated more important than fun. You see things like fellowship and community building, facilitating participants' experiences of or encounters with God, self-esteem, individual faith formation, developing Christian leaders, some of the great values of camp. If we think of camp as a place that has to be safe and it has to be fun, if it's bracketed by those, then we can see and hear some of the core values of what we do in the camp environment and how we see ourselves. So you can see that faith is not just an appendage of camp, but that faith formation is incorporated into all aspects of the camp experience. It's not just we do all this fun stuff and then, oh yeah, we also have Bible study. While we're doing these experiential activities, while we're canoeing, while we're going up the rock wall, while we're playing these games, we talk about what has to do with our faith. Parents expect it. Camp directors expect it. And the young people themselves expect it. They know they're at Bible camp. They know it's time to talk about God. And it's a chance for them to interact with each other. It's a safe space where they can express their faith and their beliefs. In the Effective Camp Research Project, we uncovered 5 characteristics that might be considered fundamental to the Christian summer camp experience. Now, these characteristics have no direction of influence. They don't have a set order. They kind of mutually interact with one another. And if one of these characteristics breaks down, the entire experience breaks down, and it doesn't feel like camp anymore. And so you see faith-centered, safe space, relational, unplugged from home is the one at the bottom there that's hard to see. And unplugged from home, that means both a physical separation from home, and it also means unplugged from our devices, and a chance to interact in a different way. And so it encompasses several of those things. And then participatory and experiential learning environment. And so when these things are interacting together, we say it gives rise to the camp experience. And when these 5 things were in place in our research project, we saw positive and lasting impacts in the young people. And I want to tell you a little bit about those lasting impacts. So as we measure impacts, camp had a significant impact on my life, 85% of them in our survey said it. Parents, it is clear that camp had an impact on my child, 93%. And then the parents, we asked if they noticed significant changes in their children. And more than 1 in 5 said, yes, I've noticed significant changes in my children as a result of the camp experience. We said, what kind of changes did you see? Well, here's just an example of some of the changes they saw. They're singing Christian songs around the house. They've engaged me in conversations about God and faith. More helpful around the house. Nicer and more pleasant. A greater interest in attending church. Reading Bible more frequently. Asking to pray around meals. Changes that they notice in their young people. So we surveyed the campers on the first day of camp, on the last day of camp, and then 2 months after camp. And one of the things we're able to do is say, okay, what were their faith practices in the couple months before camp compared with the months after camp? 2 months before, 2 months after camp. I want you just to notice that the columns on the right are taller than the columns on the left. You see that? The columns on the right represent these faith practices after camp, in the 2 months following camp. And you can see an increase in personal prayer, prayer with family, reading the Bible, and church attendance. All of these things have increased in these young people. You can see some significant influences. We were also able to say, okay, what about this so-called camp high? Does this really exist? Well, as it turns out, yeah, it does. Sort of. Some of the things that we asked them about increased during the camp experience and then regressed to keep pre-camp levels. Let me give you an example. One of the items was worship services are usually boring. At the beginning of camp, some of the campers were fairly likely to agree with a statement like that. At the end of camp, they were less likely to agree with a statement like that. In a sense, finding worship services more engaging and more interesting. 2 to 3 months following camp, they were back to their pre-camp agreement levels. So what happens in that interim? How are we helping to bridge that gap between the camp experience and the experience in our congregations? And that's something that is worth talking about, I think. Down here, it says increase happiness, so increase positivity. I know you can't see that the bottom of that slide, but that makes sense, right? They're happier. They have an emotional high, so that's part of what we might call the camp high. Now, what I mean over here, this one says vertical faith. Vertical faith in comparison to something called horizontal faith. So how can I explain this? Think of vertical faith as like the belief statements. I believe in God. God created the world. Jesus rose from the dead. Most of these campers believed these things before coming to camp. And camp had the impact of making their belief even more sure. They're even more sure of these beliefs. Following camp, they essentially regress to pre-camp levels in terms of those vertical faith beliefs. However, we also ask questions about faith relevance in daily life. Faith matters to me. It's important to belong to a church or congregation. I have Christian friends I can turn to. In these more horizontal categories, faith reaching out to the world, it increased during camp and stayed high 2 to 3 months following camp. So when you kind of think of a pastor's main worry about camp, oh my gosh, we've got these 19 or 20-year-olds that are talking about faith, and they're trying to articulate theology, and sometimes they do a great job, and sometimes they struggle. Why? Because they're trying to figure it out as well. They're doing it alongside their campers. And sometimes you get pastors that worry that there's going to be some sort of bad theology picked up, and that the kids are going to carry that forward somehow. Vertical versus horizontal faith. Those pieces of theology, that's not what they carry forward. They're experimenting with their ideas of God, and that's a good thing. What they're taking with them, what's lasting, is the idea that faith matters. The idea that it's important to associate with a Christian community. They're more likely to go back to you and ask you about these things because of the camp experience. And that's a positive thing. That's something we can celebrate. And that's where we say the horizontal faith is one of the lasting things. Devotional practices, engagement in church and congregation, and self-confidence. Some of these things that last in the months following camp. Now, I told you that one of your camps was part of this study, right? I'm not going to show you all of the data from Imago Dei Village, but I thought it's fun to see some of the places where your camp shines. This graph is essentially comparing what the campers at Imago Dei Village in 2016, when we did the study, said about their home church and their home life compared with their life at camp. So the first day we asked them about home or school or church. The last day we asked them about camp. I feel like I have to hide my true self at home or school. You see how long this bar is compared with camp. Almost nobody said almost always. Hardly anybody said often. You see, they feel safer in the camp environment. Some of these young people that feel picked on or left out at school do not feel the same way at camp. People at school pick on me or leave me out. I was picked on or left out at camp. I have conversations with my family about God and faith compared with conversations about God and faith at camp. Included in worship services at church, fairly high, but look at how much higher camp is. It's hard to see that one. But you can see that the experience of these young people was incredibly positive when they compare it with their home environment. They're having a different sort of experience. They're being unplugged from this environment where maybe they feel left out, maybe they feel picked on, maybe they feel not included, and they're plugged into a new environment that's participatory, that's faith-centered, that's a safe space. And that's one of the beautiful things about the camp experience. One of the key findings that I want to highlight for you today is that the Christian camp experiences lead to greater engagement in congregations and in Christian communities. It's a key finding of the Effective Camp Research Project, and it also corroborates other findings from other studies. So we can say, okay, 2 to 3 months, that's one thing. Does it last longer than that? How about the National Study of Youth and Religion? Maybe some of you have heard of this, maybe you haven't. Huge nationwide data set, a very respected study from the National Study of Youth and Religion. They asked if young people went to camp, and 5 years later, they were following these young people to see where they were as young adults. And we can see that 5 years later, those that were involved in camp as young people were significantly more likely to be involved in communal religious practices. Things like church attendance, things like association with college religious groups, Bible studies and religious small groups. They were gravitating more towards Christian community and understanding that my faith doesn't stand on its own. I need other people to be associated with. We hear these stories of young people disaffiliating with church. They're called the nuns. Have you heard this term, N-O-N-E-S? They check none on the religious survey. I'm not affiliated with any religion. So some of our young people growing up in church are leaving faith behind come college and their young adult years. Those who attended camp were over 3 times more likely to remain affiliated with their religion than those who did not attend. We can see the effects of camp 5 years later. And that includes church attendance and affiliation with congregations. That's an amazing thing that we can talk about. So when we talk about camp, when we talk about the impacts of camp, oftentimes we start in this circle here, and we're really good at talking about the immediate goals. Keeping the kids safe, helping them have new friends, making sure they're having fun, a place where they can be sure of their beliefs. And we talk about this leading to life change. As if that's a direct line. Camp doesn't stand on its own. Your directors know that. That's why you're here in this room. Because they know that you are valuable to the camp experience. And so we in camping, need the help of families and congregations to make sure that these things that happen at camp translate into subsequent change. Things that happen immediately after they return home. We saw those parents, they're singing Christian songs. They're more excited about faith. They're reading their Bible more. And then going a step further to lasting changes. We know that these things are happening because of these surveys. They want to go to your churches more. They're more engaged in worship services. They're practicing devotions more. They say that faith matters in their lives more than before camp. Now, how does that translate in your congregations? How can you help make sure that it's not just this isolated, set-apart experience, but it's integrated into the larger ecology of faith formation? Do you sing camp songs in your congregations? I hope you do. I hope you do. You know, they say the Lord's Prayer at camp. I was there. They practice liturgy. Did you know that? They follow some of your liturgical practices in the camp environment. What if you take some of the wisdom of camp and brought it into your congregation and made sure that these young people that feel so included in the camp environment have a chance to feel included in your congregation as well. Something more than an acolyte or an usher. Saying, hey, what are your ideas? How can we bring your passions and your excitement about God and faith and worship into this space, into this community? Because that can be a benefit not just to them and to their personal faith, but to your entire congregation. How can you help these amazing changes that are happening in these young people translate into lasting change, and then with the help of the Holy Spirit, and only with the help of the Holy Spirit, translate into something that we might call life change? So I was at this camp out in Pennsylvania, Lutheran camp. And it was at confirmation camp, very similar to a confirmation camp might look like at Imago Dei Village. And I was sitting in their amphitheater, beautiful outdoor amphitheater. They had a little stream running past here. Can't really see, but there's a cross right here. And this is an altar, so it's like a worship space. It's this beautiful sanctuary. And the kids were scattered all around camp. And it was peaceful. And I was sitting there thinking, how can I describe the camp environment? What sort of metaphor might I use to describe camp? And the wind was blowing across my face, and the sunshine was coming in, and it was just peaceful. And then I heard this voice from off to my right. All clear! From off to my left. All clear! I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but this is a short video clip of what happened next. Zip away, they said. And this young lady, with a look somewhere between elation and pure terror, flew by that cross and right through the middle of the sanctuary. And I thought maybe we can think of the camp experience as a zip line through a sanctuary. Now bear with me, all right? A zip line through a sanctuary. Sometimes we think of zip lines as just a joyride, right? It's just a joyride, but this was something more, because there was a sanctuary here. This experience, this incredibly tactile, frightening, emotional experience happened within the context of a set-apart, holy space dedicated to the glory of God and surrounded by wonderful people that are helping to interpret that experience. Set within the sanctuary was this experience. And this young person wasn't just flying on this zip line alone. She was what we call en belay. Who's ever been rock climbing or on a high ropes course? En belay means that you've got a harness on. Oh, it went too fast. You've got a harness on, and it's attached to a rope through a pulley, and somebody's on the other end of that pulley and holding that rope, and you can't fall because that person's got you. And that person's got a backup belay and a backup belay. And as you climb, your cabin mates are cheering you on. You can do it. We believe in you. Oh, you don't have to go all the way up if you don't want to. It would be great if you did. Whatever you decide to do, we're here for you. We're with you. What does it mean to be en belay? That somebody has you physically, emotionally, spiritually safe, encouraging you in the climb, challenging you along the way. And then there's the zip line itself. Participatory, kinesthetic. This experience that it takes a while to unpack and understand. It's all of these things together. Do you see that? It's not just the zip line. It's not just the fun tactile. It's the community that's surrounding you, and it's the sanctuary and the holy space. Now, who's been on a zip line itself? A zip line, great. Okay, so you know that when you're on a zip line, you're in this harness, and they're not very comfortable. And when you come to the end of the zip line, you kind of do this. You go zzz. And then you just hang there by your harness. And you can't do anything or go anywhere. You're just stuck. Until someone brings the ladder and helps you down. Friends, you're the folks that bring the ladder. These young people are having this incredible experience. They need help unpacking it. They need help down from that zip line. And they need someone to accompany them as they walk back and either say, "Oh, I'm never doing that again," or "I'd like to go again right now." Okay, tell me about it. Tell me what happened. More than just, was it fun? Because the answer, again, in 97, 98, 99% of the cases, yes, it was fun. Let's go beyond that. Think of the 5 characteristics. Who'd you meet? What did you learn? Participatory. What did you do there? What new experiences did you have? Faith-centered. Where did you encounter God? What new faith practices did you participate in? Think of these sorts of questions as we're unpacking the experience. So again, Effective Camp. You can find out more about the project and some of the findings on the website there. But so far, it's been 11 camps in 5 different states that we've looked at. Over 2,000 campers and 600 parents have been involved in this. It's a very exciting project, and we're continuing the work. Thank you so much for participating in this. Imago Dei Village was one of our first camps that participated, and it's really been an exciting project. And there's a lot of great findings. And I want to thank you for your support of Camping Ministries and for your support of these young people who are coming down off that zip line. Thanks so much.